Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Let's try to come on. There we go. All right. My name is Willard Gould Jr. I am an enrolled member of the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe. It's my honor to serve as the inaugural tribal liaison for Seattle Colleges. And we just want to welcome you to South. There'll be some official welcomes here in a minute to this campus and so forth, but we want to start off in a good way. And so we have a little bit of our Black River Canoe family that's going to open us up in a good way. We also want to give a little context here, so I called on one of our Seattle Central alumni to come and help us out with that, Justice Bill.
Justice Bill Tietzta to all Chut Muckleshoot. Good morning, everyone. My name is Justice. I'm very grateful that my younger brother made it. But I wanted to share a little bit of history about our canoe family's name and also the area that we're at. This whole valley was populated by our ancestors, our Duwamish ancestors, the people of the inside. And as a result of settler colonialism of the Treaty of Point Elliott, many of those ancestors were removed. There were 9 families that were allotted at Muckleshoot, and I believe it was 9 families that were allotted at Skokomish. And then other Duwamish families moved up and down the I-5 corridor from Lummi down to Skokomish. But this region, our family comes from a couple of villages on what historically was the lower White River and today is the Duwamish River. Our family, the descendants of Iola, Lobahan, and Hanny Jack come from the village of Stuck, which was further down the river, or further up the river, I should say, in present day Kent. And then our grandfather on the Bill side had a winter house at To'al, which is Herring House, the village at the mouth of the Duwamish River as it empties into Elliott Bay. But to honor kind of that connectedness with our relatives across the Bay of Skokomish, we're going to sing a song that was shared with our family by James Old Coyote. It's an Eagle Spirit paddle song.
Thank you, Black River. Appreciate you being here. Hope it's a good way. And with that, we're going to segue and have Chairman Forsman come for some opening remarks. It's really an honor. Leonard's been ever present in the planning and helping us with this work, as he consistently always shows up for us in community. So it's my honor to introduce you to the chairman of the Skokomish Tribe, Leonard Forsman, and also the chairman for the Board of Regents for UW Seattle.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. It's a great honor. Will, my family comes from education background. Of course, his father was one of the original, Dr. Bill was one of the original trailblazers in Indian education, setting an example for the rest of us. And then my late sister Marion was one who's worked a lot in local school districts and with the Washington Education Association. So it's great to have that legacy there. So yes, I'm the chairman of the Skokomish Tribe. I've been chairman since 2005, and also president of Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians. And for this year, I'm the chair of the Board of Regents at the University of Washington. And I know we got some grads in the room, including me, and one standing up here, and some others that have studied there or graduated from there. And it's a great opportunity and option for Indian students to attend. And we really work hard on trying to increase our enrollment at UW Seattle, Tacoma, and Bothell. And so it's been a real honor to serve in that position this year. And I've been on the board since about 21 and learned a lot about higher education. I kind of knew some from the outside, but being on the inside, it's a very complex, challenging world that you all work in. And appreciate you committing your time and effort and careers to helping people, or young people primarily, get an education and learn more about the world and put together a better future, moving forward. So I'd like to thank Black River Canoe family for the song. Brings back lots of memories of the canoe journey that I've been fortunate to be part of since 2004. Skokomish, or a Central Sound tribe, it was primarily a marine-oriented tribe. Lived on Kitsap Peninsula and Bay Bridge, and had villages and camps over here in the Seattle side, primarily on Elliott Bay and the mouth of the Duwamish River, and have overlapping usual custom fishing under the Treaty of Point Elliott with the Muckleshoot tribe. And we work together a lot to protect those treaty rights and also, preserve our culture. I started out born and raised on the Port Madison Reservation in Skokomish, and my dad was on the tribal council, and my great uncle was on the tribal council. So we had a tribal leadership tradition. And growing up there, on a checkerboard reservation. A reservation was established by the Treaty Point Elliott. Chief Seattle signed for us, and as one of our ancestral chiefs. His father was from Skokomish, and his mother was from over on this side of the water. So he had connections to both sides of the water, and was one of the early diplomats and traders with the new people that he saw come in. First in 1792, when he was a young boy, when Vancouver, with the British Navy, came in, the Explorer off of Bainbridge Island, and then later the Hudson's Bay Company, the Catholic missionaries, and then the Americans, leading to the treaty. And once that treaty was established, it quickly got divided into allotments, and we were all assigned as different allotments to live on, but primarily we stayed in our small village at Old Man House, which was our primary winter house over in Skokomish. And then that was broken up. So when I was growing up, we were a small minority of people on our own reservation with very little, but what we did have was our family connections with each other, interfamily connections, and our culture, what we were able to survive with, and then we had education, and our parents really pushed all of us to get educated so that we could adapt to the world and kind of move things forward. And Chief Seattle wanted that when he signed the treaty. A year after the treaty was signed, the Indian agent came to the reservation, and the first thing he asked about, where's our school? So Indian education's always been very important to our people. And it wasn't just introduced after contact. We had strict ways of life that our people were instituted into their communities, where there was always an early rise in the morning, and we were the whole village was told to go jump in the Puget Sound. So it'd be interesting to try to institute that today. But it was, very engaged in trying to learn from observation. So it's just been a great opportunity for me to, go through. I went to the local school district and ended up at University of Washington and got my anthropology degree. And that was because my parents pushed me, and my siblings pushed me. And then the tribe did what they could to support me as well at that time. So I went to work for our museum, and I was studying at the Burke Museum, and we were really trying to reclaim our culture and our artifacts and a lot of the things that we had lost over the decades. And I worked with other museums at Macau, Yakima, and other places to try to do that. And this was in the 1980s. And ultimately, during Centennial, we started to really push forward with our culture and sovereignty and our treaty rights protection. And that kind of culminated in the summer of '89 in the Tribal Canoe Journey, which launched as Lies Lake from Skokomish. And it was there that we had a challenge from the Billa tribe to paddle to their reservation, which was 600 miles north, and they gave us 4 years to get ready. So the travel journey has been going on ever since. So what you saw here is a part of that, the canoe family, very active. Will and his people have been very active in the canoe journey from the very beginning, and it's just an expression of our sovereignty. So as we move forward, and think about what we're going to do today is teach you more about our way of life. And it's kind of a braided, complicated, but powerful adaptation and outlook or philosophy or whatever you want to call it is our connection to the land, because we represent thousands of years of occupation and relationships here that was interrupted pretty severely by the U.S. government. It was trying to disconnect us from this land, and they did that through putting us on reservations and then dividing their reservations up and then putting us in boarding school and then passing laws that allowed them to sell lands on a reservation, then finally realizing in the 1930s that it wasn't working that well to assimilate us because we wouldn't assimilate. So they tried to empower our governments. So since then, our people have been empowering our governments to self-govern our way forward. And as it's been demonstrated by the tribes of Washington, that people who went off and got educated and also hired professionals that were dedicated to our same mission, we've been able to rebuild our nations in a way that are very unique and based on values and traditions. Respect the land, respect the water, take care of your elders, take care of your youth, share your wealth. If you get some wealth, share it and invest it in your community and think long term. 7 generations back, 7 generations forward. So what we do is try to invest in that. And many of the tribes that are represented here are some of the biggest employers in their respective counties. And are also some of the biggest charitable givers as well, and also are very good employers. We provide health care for everybody we can, and we try to take care of our people the best as we can. And that's just a part of our values, because everybody that I know that's been a tribal leader started out with very little, and knows what it's like to be discriminated against, to have to do without, be in poverty, and knows that can happen to other people, and if giving other people just a little bit of support and confidence can go a long way. So as educators, I think it's important to remember that teaching everybody about tribal culture and history is good. Everybody can learn a lesson. It's a great way to learn civics, because you're going to learn about the 3 branches of government really quickly once you start studying the tribes around here. You'll learn about the Congress and the President and the Supreme Court, how they work within Indian country, and then all the agencies that the federal government has, and also relationships with the state government as well. So, and then with our Indian students, oftentimes they're the first ones of their family to go to school, and it can be very foreign to them, which is it's kind of ironic that people could be going to school in their traditional territory and feel like it's a foreign place. So I think we always assume that, oh, this person's going to adapt really well, they're local, but oftentimes this system is foreign, and we need to remember that, and make sure there's opportunities like this one and other programs that I know that will, and the rest of the community here in the South Seattle Colleges, organization are doing. So keep up the good work. I really hope that we'll continue to invest in opportunities like this. We got a lot of people in the room you'll hear from that have been doing similar activities and investing in events like this. And all the young people that have worked on this event, thank you. It's how I got my start, is pitching in. You go to the powwow, there's something to do, go do it. If the garbage needs to be dumped, do it. Ask how you can help. And that's a really important part of, of doing that. I used to, learn how to fillet fish just by helping out. You have to keep your knife sharp, remember that. If you ever fillet fish, sharp knives is number 1. So just remember that that's important. And showing up and being part and raising your hand and just ask how I can help is a good way to achieve your dreams. So with that, I'll just go ahead and say thank you for this opportunity to say a few words. And it's I only know a few words in my language. I need to learn more. But one of my favorite ones is Hoaz Chud, which means I am finished. Thank you. Yeah.
Katir's got a gift for you, Julie. There we go. We got some of our ancestrally inspired and our wild-crafted, some of our traditional ecological knowledge gifts for our speakers this morning and for today. So we want to gift them in a good way. And again, I want to thank Leonard for being here again. To have a tribal leader at that level come and spend the day with us. And so for my Seattle College peers, I really want you to take advantage of that today and make sure that you make that connection, right? Because it's a big deal, right? For him to come over from Skokomish this morning and spend that time with us. So, but now we got to bring a little balance. Since Skokomish was up, we got to bring a muckleshoot up here. It's a little Indian humor, so come on. It's Monday. Thank you. So I get to introduce my sister. I didn't say older. Dr. Denise Bill, come on up. Some of you all look at me like, are they all related? The answer is yes. All right, that's how we get it done. But Dr. Bill is the Executive Director for Adult and Higher Education for the Muckleshoot Tribe, and Muckleshoot did either told her or designated her as their representative today, so we're glad that she's here. Thanks, Dee.
Hurtado to Denise Bill Seedsta, to all Chad Buckleshoot. Good morning, my name is Denise Bill and I'm a Muckleshoot travel member. And it was really nice of my baby brother to ask me to be a keynote speaker today. That's another joke, I'm really not the keynote. I'm just saying a couple words. But in honor of Mother's Day, if you are a mother in any way, a caring, nurturing person, please stand and let's give you a round of applause. All the mothers. It's not an easy job, so just wanted to carry the Mother's Day theme. The other thing is, I have 3 things to share with you this morning, and there's a journal called the Tribal College Journal. I don't know if anyone reads hardcover or softcover things anymore, but I pulled this out over the weekend, and there's 3 quotes I want to read. One is by Dr. Caldwell, president in the College of the Menominee Nation. In the early days of the tribal college movement, tribal leaders, members, and supporters rewrote the history of Indian education. They changed education from a tool of assimilation used to erase Indian identity into an opportunity to protect, preserve, and advance indigenous ways of knowing and doing. Over the past 50 years, TCUs have grown as modern expression of tribal sovereignty and self-determination rooted in knowledge systems thousands of years old. Sometimes in Western school systems, you might hear like, oh no, natives don't believe in education, things like that. I used to hear comments like that in Auburn School District 20 years ago. And that's not true. And they're not saying that today, but there can be those misconceptions. Yeah, we don't like it if you take our children away from us and put them in boarding schools. No, right? But we're taking back our education. We've been educating our Native children for years. And I heard that Seattle's colleges, they're not scared in this world today. And I heard you got some diversity awards and things like that. I really love that because sometimes living in this world today can feel scary, right? But I heard Seattle college staff and faculty and students that you guys are about something. So I just want to recognize you and tell you I've been hearing about that and I love that and I want to be a part of that. One thing I want to say is to my friend Dr. Eileen Jimenez is she's walking the talk. Dr. Jimenez graduated from the UW doctoral cohort placed at Muckleshoot Tribal College on Muckleshoot land. It was the first in the country. We graduated 9 Native and Indigenous scholars in 2023, and Dr. Jimenez is one of those. That's right. Dr. Jimenez has hired one of the few Muckleshoots to ever been hired at South Seattle College, my daughter, Elise Bill Gary. So I just want to say thank you, Dr. Jimenez, for the good work you're doing. About the UW-T, I graduated as the first Muckleshoot woman with a doctorate degree from UW-Seattle in 2012. So we love to have huskies in our family. We love to have some other things like cougars in our family. But we love the UW. So our first doctoral program was so successful that it hit a chord. Native professors teaching Native curriculum written by Native and or Indigenous authors. That's our way of doing our education. So then we did a Master's of Education for the University of Washington at Muckleshoot. We had an MOU, otherwise known as a contract. We had 15 students graduate from there, not just Muckleshoot students, students from tribes all across the state of Washington. That was so popular, we started a second doctoral program 3 years ago in another MOU contract. We have 20 Native and Indigenous students graduating in June with a doctorate degree. That's 45 students earning graduate degrees from the UW-T with the Muckleshoot cohort focus, place-based education, in 6 years period of time. So we're really excited. We're looking forward to partnering with UW in the future. They're getting a few more faculty hired at UW-T, and hopefully can continue that good work. In the meantime, Muckleshoot's moving ahead, and we're working with Western, and we should have an MOU signed with them within the next month, and we'll be starting another doctoral program winter or fall of 2027, and so we're carrying on the work. Second quote from Wilma Mankiller: "Whoever controls the education of our children controls our future." If you look around the room, this is like Indian educators top 40 here in Washington State sitting at your tables. You know, all of our friends are here today, so as my brother said, get to know these people that are sitting right with you, because they're all heavy hitters. Just a shout out to Denny Hurtado. I always think of you as my boss, our family friend. You know, been doing this work so many years, and still remember the think tanks and all that good work. One final thing, and then I'll be done with my keynote. This morning on the news, I was listening to a quote. AOC, our Latino friend, AOC, Alexandria Ortiz-Cortez, was asked about her thoughts on if she wanted to become the president someday. She said, "My ambition is to change this country." I thought that was a good ambition. All of us today have the opportunity to change our jobs where we are today, our Washington State, our tribes, our faculty, our students. And so just thank you for the opportunity to be here, and keep up your good work, Seattle colleges.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. A little too much husky talk for me this morning, but see, you're going to notice a little pattern here, so to balance that out, Dr. Rosie. So to bring up one of my many bosses, so no, it's really an honor. We appreciate the Chancellor for taking time to be with us today and truly honoring that government-to-government relationship. And when I got hired a year ago, you know, DeAndre and Dr. Rosie made it very clear that this is one of the objectives, that we were going to honor the purpose of what this position is. And so I just want to say thank you on behalf of that.
Thank you, Willard, and thank you, Chairman Forsman, for being with us today, and wonderful to hear from you, Dr. Bill, as well. Thank you for your keynote. My name is Rosie Ramondo Cherensap. I'm the Chancellor for the Seattle Colleges, and this feels like a full circle moment for me. To host this event here in my professional home, I've worked 26 years in the Seattle Colleges, most of them here at South. And I feel great about this moment here. I want to thank our colleagues from the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. Thank you very much for working with us to host this event here, this statewide event here. Maya, thank you so much for bringing everybody here today. Thank you to my colleagues from across the community college system for being here. Chairman Forsman talked about interconnectedness and the importance of that. And so I feel it's appropriate that I start by saying I'm the daughter of Rodrigo Rudy Ramondo Sr. and Emma Ramondo. I grew up on Bainbridge Island next to the Skokomish Reservation. We were Filipino-American transplants from the East Coast in the 80s to Bainbridge Island. And so the families and the community that welcomed us and raised me were the Indopino families on the island, mainly Nooksack and Lummi members, and mostly Ilocano Filipinos. So they literally spoke the same language as my parents many times. The Corpus family, Rapadas, Tabafundas, Miguels, the Nartes, and many others. This is also who this experience growing up among Indopino community, Indopino being a beautiful word combining Indian and Filipino, represents some of the histories that are formed through racist laws, right? Anti-miscegenation laws meant that the Filipino-American the Filipino migrant workers that were working up and down the West Coast couldn't intermarry, or couldn't marry, and so married with some of the Nooksack and Lummi women that would come down into Washington in those times and built a beautiful community together of people that I got to grow up around, and with many aunties who raised me right, I think, in some ways. And this is also the background and the experience that drove me into education, consequently. As a young person without the language at the time for what I felt was injustice in a predominantly white school, being one of the few brown faces there, I didn't have the language that I do now for what I was experiencing. We know it now to be systemic bias, to be built into the system. We have a lot of words for it now that we can use. I didn't have the words for it then, but I developed the rage. And that's what essentially drove me to go into education eventually to, as Dr. Bill said, AOC said, change the world, change the country, change the system for the better. And I also believe that's why we're here today, because each of us, the fact that you're here today, you have a desire to drive that forward in the ways that you can from where you sit, with the people in this room and with many others. So it was also a full circle moment. One of my dad's close friends was Steve Old Coyote. So to hear your family's song being sung today on stage to open was really touching for me. I lost my dad a few years ago, and I feel that grief every day. He was very much my connection to the island and to the community that he was so lovingly a part of. And so that felt really wonderful to hear that today. So another thank you to the Black River family for being here for that. The Seattle College is indeed unafraid and ready to charge forward with more that we learn. We fully believe in Maya Angelou's quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but you do the best you can with what you know, and when you know better, you do better. We are in the era of knowing better and seeking to do better, and so I'm grateful that we're all here together today to try to do that. So thank you again. Thank you, Willard Bill. It's been a pleasure to have you on the team with us. We're so lucky to have you here, and the family that you bring with you, and the connections that you have as well. So I'll cut it short. I don't think there's a good Tagalog word or Ilocano word for I'm finished. I think it's because Filipinos are long-winded. So I better just cut it off in English myself and hand the mic back over to to Willard. I'm killing time so you can hustle up here. Go Cougs.
Thank you, Dr. Rosie. Oh, Jerry, I'll run over. You get your gift. All right. And we want to welcome our leader on this college campus, Dr. Monica Brown, give us an official welcome here to South Seattle.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am here to bring you greetings and to welcome everyone to South Seattle College, where I have the pleasure of serving as the president. But since we're recognizing our colleges from whence we've come, I'm not a Coug, nor am I a Husky. I'm a Hoya. Go Hoyas! That said, I arrived here just a little over 19 months ago, and I want to recognize and acknowledge Dr. Bill's comments during her keynote remarks this morning, because I never aspired to become a college president. I did not aspire to become a college vice president. I aspired to change the world one student at a time, one family at a time, and one community at a time. And what brought me here from the other Washington, I'm a native of Washington, D.C., across the country to Seattle, here in the state of Washington, is that desire to continue to do good work with good people, changing lives one community at a time. And I get to do that here with an amazing group of colleagues. I want to recognize my colleagues from South Seattle College. Please stand and be recognized. Students from South, I see you. Please stand and be recognized. I get to do this great work every single day with these colleagues and those who are not here physically today, but they do the great work of changing lives, one student at a time, and acknowledging our amazing students. I want to acknowledge Fella sitting back there. Hi, Fella. He's an amazing student who represents what our work means, and joining together with us to continue to advance that work. Now let me go to the remarks that were written for me. Again, it is truly my honor to welcome you to South Seattle College. Let's recognize the mascot here. We are the Otters. And Otters, yes, yes. I especially want to extend my sincere appreciation and respect to the tribal leaders who are here with us today. We recognize and honor tribal sovereignty and the immense responsibility that comes with leading and protecting tribal nations, communities, cultures, and governments. Your presence here is not something we take lightly. The opportunity to welcome tribal leadership onto this amazing campus is both meaningful and humbling. And we thank you for sharing your time, wisdom, and partnership with us. At South Seattle College and throughout the Seattle colleges, we remain committed to strengthening and sustaining authentic relationships with tribal nations and Native communities. We understand that partnership is not simply about words spoken during special gatherings such as this, but about ongoing action, accountability, listening, and reciprocity. We are committed to creating spaces where Native and Indigenous students, faculty, staff, and community members feel seen, respected, supported, and celebrated. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible Native faculty and staff across our campuses whose leadership, advocacy, and care continue to make a lasting impact every single day. Their work helps guide us toward becoming a more inclusive and culturally responsive institution, and their dedication creates pathways for Native students to thrive and feel a true sense of belonging within our college community. These are not just words that are spoken, but we strive to do this every single day. We live by it. We hold ourselves accountable. So today is a reminder of the power of coming together across communities, across histories, and across generations to build stronger government-to-government relationships and a shared future rooted in respect, education, opportunity, and connection. We are grateful to walk alongside you in this work. So again, welcome to South Seattle College. Go Huskies, go Cougs, go Hoyas, and go Otters.
All right, and I know we Dr. Bill talked about Dr. Jimenez, but we also want to raise our hands to Eileen for graciously allowing us to let us use your artwork throughout our program. So you guys are looking through her amazing artwork you did there. Let's give her a round of applause. Now it's my honor to introduce our Associate Vice Chancellor for Access, Community, and Opportunity, for whom helps make all of this happen and empowers his employees to do this important work. So, Mr. DeAndre Fisher.
Wow, what an honor to be here and to stand before you all. All I can think about is the excitement that we are finally here at the Seattle Colleges to be able to host what is our government to government. I remember when government to government first started, so we thank the state board for the vision to ensure that we have such a space. I say thank you all for being here once again, as you heard from Dr. Monica and Dr. Rosie. I say ashe, ashe, and ashe to our distinguished guests and honorables who are here today. We are honored to have you all here. I'm going to share just a few words as I am excited to be here, but I want to first thank once again our inaugural tribal liaison to the chancellor and the Canoe family for opening us up in a great way. And in this space, my goodness, it looks amazing in here. I just have to honor the space that we have created in here. I want to say thank you for making it possible for all of the chefs' work too as well, for the beautiful breakfast that we're able to have too. I want to extend a heartfelt expressing my gratitude to our students, staff, and our faculty, our trustees, and our chancellor and presidents for their ongoing commitment to ensuring that we have spaces like this. I don't take that for granted, as there are many institutions who could not host a space such like this. So I say thank you and ashe to you. On this journey for us within the Seattle Colleges, the contributions that we see in the room is important, and we honor you all for being in this space to help us create what is an inclusive and supportive space in higher education for our indigenous communities, more so now than ever, by empowering our indigenous communities for their voices to be heard and foster true partnerships within days that we need to see. So today, we honor the fruits of the intentional community labor that has been stewarded by our tribal government liaison, Willard Bill Jr. So I say thank you again. As we continue to ensure that indigenous students, staff, and their faculty feel empowered to have access to resources to support the needs to thrive in institutions such as today. We are grateful for what was in 2023, the vision to pause land acknowledgements, because we should not just have land acknowledgements without institutional actions. And for that, we say thank you. And now we can see what the institutional actions are done right now. And I'm reminded of what our chancellor's vision was in 2023 to support at that time, led by so many people. And I want to bring them into the room. Many are here today, but we shall not forget when we did that work. Alexis, I say thank you. Maya, I say thank you. Marcus, I say thank you. Dr. Arlene, I say thank you. And to our student at that time, Sheila, I say thank you. And Reed Rogers. I remember we had so many of our planning committees and getting together to what is the search committee too as well. And then also Glenda from the state board at that time, and Sophia at the time too as well. I say thank you and I honor you, because now it is a true full circle that we stand before you to host what is the government to government. Where we begin, unfinished work from our tribal leaders and elders in our native community. This is unfinished work, but much needed work. It means so much for the Seattle Colleges to be here, as it's a step forward for us to build tribal relations with our institutional actions. I'll share a few quotes that I remember from 2023 when we were able to be in attendance for the government to government. One quote was by Lynn Palmer Holker, who says, "Building relationships is about action." Another quote, so interesting, from our keynote, Dr. Denise Gill at that time, she told us at that time, these tribal relationships have to be real, and authentic, and have long-term mutual benefits. And I hope we can see that in today. One thing that I do want to say is I honor the Seattle Colleges and the relationship that we have at North Seattle Colleges in particular, under the leadership of our president, Dr. Rachel, by hosting what is the Urban Native Education Alliance, UNEA. So we say thank you. What is the UNEA? Is here to enhance the growth and culture of what is our indigenous students and voices within the North Seattle College campus, and also host Clear Sky and the Native Warriors too as well in other special events. So we say thank you, and I leave you with this. As educators here within the Seattle Colleges, we must be reminded that for us, our students, we must teach our students it's not enough to understand the world, but it also is more than just understanding. We must lead towards a more just world. And because of the work that you all have done and will continue to do, I say ashe, ashe, and ashe. Thank you.
My physical therapist is gonna be happy all the stairs I'm doing today. End of the day, right? No, but it really is an honor to bring one of our first keynote up here today, Mr. Tim Renon, who is a Puyallup tribal member and is the executive director for the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs. And again, truly an honor to make the time and carve it out and to do this, Tim, and make time in your schedule, which we know is heavily demanded across the state. We're also encouraged with Tim's leadership, especially for us tribal liaisons. If you're a tribal liaison, we can raise your hand. We got a few in the group, all right? Right, and really the amazing work that you all do. And it's really been under Tim's leadership since he's taken office here that I really felt that coalesce and the guided work together that we're doing. Many people are doing great on their own, but in terms of us, a group, there's over 100 of us now, so across the state. So, yeah, thank you, Tim. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate the introduction there. Atlachel Twagalapu, Sigi Abdiisha, Tim Renon Tisa, Spoyal Bavshed. Good day to you, honorable, noble people, my dear people. My name is Tim Renon, and I'm a member of the Puyallup tribe. And I'm really grateful to be here. Prior to coming to work for the state, I had the opportunity of working as the City of Seattle's Director of Tribal Relations Director for a few years. And it was during that time that I got to work with Councilmember Juarez, Deborah Juarez, and one of her main things that she always stressed was doing more than just the land acknowledgement. And so what I've seen here so far this morning is just that. So I raise my hands to Seattle colleges for going beyond just acknowledging our tribal people, acknowledging the lands upon which your institutions operate, but for actually doing the work and following through with action. And so this type of a gathering that you've convened today is an example of that. So thank you. Thank you very much. Before I get into my remarks, I just want to thank Will and the Black River Canoe family for opening us up in a good way, reminding us of the people of these lands, helping us feel that heartbeat of the drum, you know, being connected to our land. I love the name of the family, the Black River Canoe family. It's a reminder of what was taken away from our people here. The Black River is no more because of the development and all of the things that were done to this land. And that's a reminder to us of that. So thank you. I appreciate Chairman Forsman and his leadership and talking a little bit about the history of our people and how we got to where we are today. I consider Chairman Forsman one of my mentors and somebody that I've learned from for many years, and so really grateful to be here and listen to his words. Dr. Rosie, or Dr. Bill, sorry, really appreciated you sharing that quote from AOC. The intention is to change this country. And I've heard that repeated by other speakers. We are here because we're here about change, right? And when I took this position, with the governor's office, I was excited because it gave me an opportunity to help change the system, change the way in which our state agencies, our state leadership engaged with tribes. And so I'm excited for the opportunity to work with all of you and work with our agencies to change the way in which our state engages with our tribal partners. Dr. Rosie also talking about changing the system. And when you know better, do better. And I see that you folks are doing that. Dr. Brown, changing lives one student at a time. And I really appreciated the comment about walking alongside you in this work. That's what it's all about, partnerships. And I know I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, but I really appreciated that comment. And again, DeAndre, thank you for reiterating Councilmember Juarez's words about doing more than a light acknowledgement and following through with action. So thank you for our speakers, our prior keynotes, and believe me, I would rather have been one of the opening remarks than being a keynote speaker, but I am grateful to be here with you to share a little bit about this past legislative session. We'll ask you to give a brief update about that, and then talk about a little bit about consultation and that government-to-government relationship and how that can help you as you continue to move forward in your work, the government-to-government work here at Seattle Colleges. And I apologize for those of you that happen to be at Central Washington University a couple weeks ago, because it might sound a little bit familiar, but there I only had 5 minutes. So I'll expand on it a little bit more today. So with regard to the legislative update, last session was a short session, but it was a very busy session. There were tons of bills that were introduced, and there was a lot of work going on. And at the same time, as you all know, it was a challenging budget session. And unfortunately, that doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon, so anticipate the next session being a budget challenge as well. But I reached out to the governor's office and wanted to share some of his perspectives with you on the last legislative session. He said that from the governor's perspective, highlights included the passage of the millionaire's tax, 5 of the 6 governor request legislation, additional funding for transportation infrastructure, historic investments in housing, and the masking bill being signed. Themes of supporting immigrants, protecting civil rights, investing in infrastructure, housing and transportation particularly, and making our tax system more fair were central to last session's successes. On the tribal side, I wanted to provide a couple of updates on some tribal legislation. And if you look at Senator Kaufman's website, she published a nice summary of tribal impacts in legislation during the last legislative session. Some of the highlights there were the codifying of our office under Senate Bill 6035. Up until this year, our office served at the pleasure of the governor. It wasn't a recognized, a codified cabinet-level agency. Well, today it is. And so, thank you to tribal leaders that supported us in that effort. Now we have a cabinet-level agency, a permanent cabinet-level agency in the state government that will guarantee that there will always be a tribal liaison working for the governor and tribes. So thank you for your support on that. The next one I wanted to just update you on is one that Chairman Forsman and the Skokomish tribe led on, and that was House Bill 2532, the nitrous oxide regulation that protects our youth and our public. It made the unauthorized sale of nitrous oxide a gross misdemeanor while maintaining exceptions for medical and industrial use. So through the leadership of Chairman Forsman and the Skokomish tribe, we now have better protections on the use of nitrous oxide to protect our children. So thank you, Chairman Forsman, for that. Senate Bill 6035, strengthening the native voice. This requires elections officers to meet regularly with tribes before the next scheduled election cycle to make sure that tribal needs are being included in the planning for upcoming elections and to make sure that native voices are able to be heard. And so we're really grateful for all of those that worked on that and improved that consultation, that engagement with tribes when it comes to hearing the native voice. And one more that I wanted to just touch base on was Senate Bill 6137, which I think was of particular importance to colleges and universities. That expanded sports wagering to include Washington collegiate events in tribal casinos. It also provided for new legal protections and economic opportunities for tribes. However, the sports wagering is not to be conducted on the performance or non-performance of an individual athlete. So you can bet on the games, not individual athletes, or any in-game decisions made by a coach, or any officiating decisions. So there are protections that were put in place to ensure the integrity of the game. And it creates a gross misdemeanor for threatening sports officials or any of the participants in the games. So I know some of the colleges and universities may have had some concern about that, but there were safeguards built in to that legislation. And so I just wanted to share some of what that particular one did, because I know it was of particular interest to you folks. As far as the budget goes, there were some wins for tribes in this year's budget, even though it was a tight budget year. There was the continued funding for the tribal opioid prevention and treatment account of $4.8 million. There was substance use prevention, so $2 million for grants to tribes to implement the Icelandic model of prevention in their communities. There's cultural resources protection. There's $175,000 allocated to the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation to develop a model ordinance to help guide local jurisdictions to make sure that our cultural resources are protected. And there was affordable housing investments made. There was an increased funding by $8.3 million for the Housing Trust Fund. 10% of that is for either affordable multifamily rental housing projects and or home ownership projects for federally recognized tribes. So those are some of the highlights that I wanted to share with you that impacted tribes during this last session. There was a lot of other legislation that was being worked on that didn't get through, and I'm sure will be brought up again in this coming session. So now I want to switch gears a little bit and move to talking about the consultation, the tribal consultation. I'm going to start off by providing some context on the history of the tribal-state relationship. And then I'll talk about how efforts such as the Centennial Accord, the Millennium Agreement, RCW 43376, and Executive Order 2510 have helped shape meaningful consultation and accountability here in the state of Washington. And then finally, I'll conclude by talking about why it's important for state institutions and agencies to understand tribal history and sovereignty. So just as a little bit of background, Washington is home to 29 federally recognized tribes and 3 other out-of-state tribes who have territory within the state of Washington. Tribal nations are sovereign governments, not interest groups or other stakeholders. They have governments, executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch. They are governments. This distinction is very important for you to understand as you engage with tribes. It's disrespectful to their sovereignty, their authority to determine for themselves when you engage with them as any other community stakeholder. Before statehood and the founding of the country, for that matter, tribes had complete sovereignty over their lands, their people, and their resources. They governed themselves, and we still do so today. Washington's tribal-state relations grew out of the 1850 treaties that Chairman Forsman mentioned earlier, where tribes reserved rights to land, self-government, and resources like hunting, fishing, and gathering, while ceding millions of acres of lands to the U.S. government. The treaties promised that tribes would receive health care, housing, education, and other services. And as we know, treaties are recognized under the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution, as the supreme law of the land. And so our governments, federal, state, local, need to be abiding by those treaties. Unfortunately, despite those treaty promises, the following century brought devastating federal policies such as forced assimilation, boarding schools, termination and relocation, all of which eroded trust and caused unthinkable trauma that is still felt today. For much of the 20th century, tribal-state relations were strained as the state often ignored these treaty-reserved rights and failed to recognize tribal sovereignty and the legal authority that tribal governments represented. This led to continual conflict over fishing, land use, jurisdiction, that ultimately culminated in the fish wars of the 60s and 70s, and landmark court decisions like the Bolt decision that affirmed treaty rights and tribal co-management. Following the fish wars era, the state and tribes recognized that constant litigation and conflict was unsustainable and began to formalize the government-to-government relationship instead of treating tribes as just another interest group or stakeholder. The Centennial Accord became the written manifestation of those efforts. The Centennial Accord explicitly affirmed tribal sovereignty and established a government-to-government framework between the state tribes. It states that each party respects the sovereignty of the other and sets out a structure for ongoing communication, cooperation, and implementation procedures. After 10 years of working within the Centennial Accord, the tribes and state leaders got together again in 1999 to develop the new Millennium Agreement that further clarified the government-to-government relationship and provided even more structure around the framework of tribal-state relations. And it called for regular summits, agency tribal work, and annual reporting on progress of complying with the Centennial Accord. Then in 2012, the Washington State Legislature adopted RCW 43376, which codified that government-to-government relationship and the expectation of state agencies to develop consultation policies to designate tribal liaisons that report directly to the head of each agency and engage tribes early on issues that affect tribal rights and interests. The consultation process emphasizes the importance of identifying issues early, involving tribal governments at the very beginning of policy development, not after it's already been developed or decisions have already been made. It has to be done at the very beginning. And meeting regularly to resolve disputes which creates accountability. Over time, this framework has led to more formal consultation protocols and regular annual centennial accord meetings. We'll be having this year's meeting at Snoqualmie, October 12th through 15th. And we've invited all of the tribal liaisons from all of the educational institutions to be part of those meetings during that time. And the work of the government-to-government relationship is ever evolving. It's led to the implementation guidelines that you can find on our website. That includes consultation principles and dispute resolution processes, as well as agency accord plans. It's led to our government-to-government training that some of you may have taken. It's an all-day training where our training manager goes through similar things of what I've talked about so far, but really goes deep into the government-to-government relation and how we can better respect those and implement that. And it's led to the passage of the John L. Hoy Since Time Immemorial Act, which requires instruction on local tribal history in schools. At the last Centennial Accord, last October, Governor Ferguson signed Executive Order 2510, a new foundation for Washington state governmental relations with sovereign tribal nations, that reiterated our governor's commitment and expectations of cabinet agencies to implement meaningful government-to-government relationships through proactive engagement with tribes, early and often tribal consultation, recognition and incorporation of indigenous knowledge into their decision-making processes, supporting Washington State Native artists, transparency and accountability and compliance with RCW 43376. It provides for tribal relations training for the governor's cabinet and agency leaders, as well as all state employees. And so we're currently working on developing that training that will be available digitally when it's all ready to go, so that any state employee anywhere will be able to get some of that training. And there's many other things that it does and that we're working on. We've convened several work groups to help develop things that are called for under the executive order, and we're making progress on that. All of these things that I've talked about demonstrates where we are as a state today in our commitment to engaging with tribes in good, meaningful ways, and honoring and respecting tribal sovereignty and rights. So why does this matter to you folks, to state agencies and institutions? As mentioned earlier, tribes are sovereign governments with powers of self-government and that are parallel to and not subordinate to state or federal government. They are not another interest group, as I mentioned earlier. They are sovereign nations and should be treated as such. State agencies and institutions make decisions daily that impact tribes. Pretty much everything we do as a state agency or as an institution has some connection to a tribal interest, whether it's their lands, their waters, their people. So we need to remember that everything we do impacts tribes. Understanding the history and sovereignty helps state institutions make better decisions, make more informed decisions. And it helps us move to a mindset of partnership with a co-equal government rather than just treating tribes as another stakeholder. It influences how budgets are allocated, how infrastructure and environmental decisions are made, and how schools teach about tribal history and sovereignty. When state institutions understand tribal history and sovereignty, they make better, more legally sound decisions that are developed with tribes, not for tribes. The goal is to honor legal obligations and build the kind of partnerships and trust that benefit everyone in Washington. So as you continue to explore ways to build up your government-to-government relationships, your programs here, ask yourselves, how will this policy, this action, this decision impact our tribal partners? There's even a slight possibility that it will impact a tribal interest. Reach out to them, engage with them. It will save you time, it will save you money, and it will prevent further harm and damage to relationships that, as I mentioned earlier, have been strained for a long time. It will lead to better outcomes, more just policies and decisions, and it will also lead to stronger trust-based relationships with the tribal nations. So I will leave, as Chairman Forsman left, Oyavcha, I am finished.
Thank you again, once again, Tim, for making the time and being here with us today. Tim's also running for tribal council right now, so we're trying to sabotage that though, because we don't want to lose him at the state office. So, Steve's brother. But it's my honor, our next keynote this morning, Mr. Denny Hurtado, retired, this is going to cost me heavy having him here today, but that's all right. But Denny was a longtime tribal council member and chair at Skokomish, and led our Office of Native Education at OSPI for a very, very long time. And for much of that time, it was just him and Joan Baker, two people in the office. But really was a key mover in terms of the John McCoy, the Leilach since time memorial curriculum, the legislation that got passed, and doing this work. And I still remember, it was 29 years ago, Denny, right at this time of the year, I was completing my master's and my teaching cert, and I got a job at the tribal school. And Denny looked me dead in the eye, and he's like, "Are you sure?" That's what you want to do. A little Indian joke in the humor here, okay. But too early? But acknowledging the challenges of sometimes working in our communities and what it means for this work. And so, but Denny has been like a big brother and an uncle, and mentor to me and to my family for a long time, and encouraging, pushing me in this work as well. And it was a real honor. I got to follow in his footsteps a couple times now, but I've been a part of some of his key projects. So let's put our hands together for Denny Hurtado.
Can still stand. All right. I'm only here because of Bill. Not really. I'm committed to educating people throughout the world about who we are and what we're all about, because really, we're almost invisible in our own country. And that's what we're trying to change, is to make sure that we're visible, because we've been here for thousands of years. You know, we're the original landowners of everything in North America, basically, right? So I wasn't sure what Will wanted me to talk to you about, though. When you say government to government, you know, I mean, it's pretty simple. Government to government. That's what government to government is. But it's a very complex issue, because look what's happening in Iran and the U.S. Our two governments, U.S. and Iran, are trying to figure out how to stop this war. They're going government to government. That's what government to government is. So, but I'm an educator basically, and a tribal leader. I'm a recovering tribal leader. I used to say this, I go around the country and I'd be up here and, You know, we have all these stereotypes of Native people, who we are and what we're about. It was mentioned earlier, we don't want to go to school, we're all drunk, lazy, blah, blah, blah. So I was up there, 500 people. Half of them were natives. I said, well, my name is, and I'm a recovering, and I hesitated for about 10, 15 seconds. I know, no, alcoholic. And then I said, tribal chairman. And they all busted out laughing. Now I hear it all over these tribal chairmen. Like, when he does that, when he retires, he's going to be saying that. I bet you he's already a couple of times thinking about it. But anyway, my name's Denny Hurtado. I'm from Skokomish, Tuwaduk, people of the river. And my Indian name is Tachmiashtan. And it means when you come out of a warm house and in cold air, a breath of air. My family, they say, you're just full of hot air, Denny. I know. But a lesson learned here a little bit about our culture. Coast Salish people get their names from our ancestors. We have our names of our ancestors that have names thousands of years ago and just moved forward. And so I got my name from my great-great-uncle, who was a medicine man, Dr. Charlie. And so that's just a little bit of history here, you know. I know Chief Seattle's daughter came to Skoke and married a Skoke too, you know. That's a true story. But I think I'm going to talk a little bit about tribal government and curriculum, the STI curriculum, because I spent many, many years on this. And if any of you know what that is, it stands for Since Time Immemorial Tribal Sovereignty in Washington State. And it's a very comprehensive curriculum, pre-K 20. It's all online, it's all free. You go to it, check it out. You want to learn about Indians, you're going to learn a lot from that, because it's produced by the natives. We produced it, and that was the purpose of it. They're always trying to tell us who we are, and so we said, no, we're gonna write our own history. And so that was what our journey was. And so I was a fisherman, and then there was no more fish, but I had all these degrees, and I thought, well, maybe it's time for me to use these. And so the job came up at Evergreen State College to be a director of Upper Bound program. Great program, one of the best programs there is, trio programs. And anyway, I became the director, and then from there, after 6 years of a residential program with Native kids, African American kids, Latino kids, Asian kids, white kids, dorms in 6 weeks, that was enough for me. So then the job came up at OSPI for Director of Indian Education. So I thought, well, I'll apply for it. You know, I have my degree in social science and a master's in school administration, so, and a lifetime teaching certificate. So I applied, and I get there. I don't know really what I'm doing. I never really worked for the state. Evergreen's different, kind of, than regular state institution. So I get to the OSPI, and I meet Joan Banker. And Joan Banker, we couldn't have done this job without her. She was my assistant. And she was there, she retired from there just a couple years ago. She was there 53 years. And so what's good about that is anytime I needed anything done, she knew where to go, how to do it, when to do it, and I didn't have to worry about that. Will said, yeah, there was Joan and Denny at OSPI. Well, I was half-time Indian Ed, and Joan was half-time Indian Ed, and then we were half-time in Title I. Basically, we only had one FTE for all of Washington State to focus on Indian education. Now, how do you do that? 29 tribes, big state, you know, we don't know what we're going to do, you know. I'm thinking, you know, okay, I'm just going to go with the flow for now for a couple years, and then, okay, let's have this tribal summit on Indian education. And this summit was the spark that caused all this. I heard somebody say we had 100 liaisons now. Who said that? Will, is that true? Holy cow. Man, we can move now. Because we didn't have, I was a half-time, basically, kind of like a tribal ed person. And I've only knew, when I was working for the state, there's probably 5 of us or 6 of us in the whole state. Now there's 100. So that's power. We're making progress. That shows something. And those tribal liaisons really have a very important job, too, to carry on the message of what the tribal leaders want. You know, and that's how we live. That's how we go. But the first thing was, you know, our first government contact was our treaties. That's where we did our, you know, all the nations, all the Indian nations made treaties with the federal government. You know the history. They lied. They thought they were going to get away with everything. They didn't realize that it'd come back to bite them in the end, which it did. And, you know, the treaties of 1855, the Stevens treaties, there were 10 of them in the Northwest. I come from the Point No Point Treaty. You know, these other guys come, you know, all the different tribes and locations, they're all over the west side of the state. And so then in 1989, I got a call from Ron Allen. And he's a tribal chair for the Squalums. And he goes, Denny, we were having this meeting with the governor, and we're going to sign this document. And it's going to be at the Burke Museum. You know, I just got on council probably 6 years before that, 10 maybe. And I go, well, okay, you know, what? We're going to sign something with the state? You go, yeah, we're going to invite all the tribes. We're going to try and get this Centennial Accord together. And so, actually, I don't want to date myself, and that was signed in 1989. I'm the original signer of that document. All the chairmen signed that document. I'll tell you a little story though. When I was signing that document, it looked like this. I had my fingers crossed, signed by me. And I wasn't sure about it, but I could see back when I look back how it does make a difference to try and develop these relationships with the state and the feds and our communities. So that's an important document. It's one of a kind, it's the only one in the whole US of A. And we're making great progress in this state. Probably a whole lot of progress compared to a lot of other states that are having the country, you know. They have a hard time, you know. They look to us, you know, to see what the Northwest is doing, because we're shakers and movers. And we're not afraid to fight or go to court, whatever it takes, you know. We don't like going to court because we know the court is not very good to us all the time. And so we want to try and, you know, deal with it out of court. And that was the premise for the Centennial Accord. After a while, it got, the first few years, it was kind of, you know, angry family. And then, you know, then you go, well, we can't talk about it. You know, and it didn't work. And so finally it came to where we realized, well, we can still meet and talk about things that we can't talk about. That's not so controversial, and that's how we proceeded to go. So then, you know, another 10 years later, then we signed the Millennium Agreement. And then I was there to sign that too. And so that was really focused document there to really focus on how we deal with developing relationships with state agencies, federal agencies, and communities. And they had to focus on our culture, history, government. That's the rule. And so then, in 2003, when I was director of the Department of Indian Education in Goya, we decided that we wanted to co-host a summit for the tribal leaders on education, Indian education, basically. And so we've worked on that. And we met in Quinault Indian Nation. They agreed to host us. And so in 2003, we met down in Quinault. That was the year John McCoy got elected to the legislature. And he came to the meeting. We had all the tribal leaders. The way it was designed, there was a round, like a U table. All the tribal leaders are all around the table. The governor was up front the first day. Tribal leaders were saying, well, what do you want for the education of your kids? We went all the way around. By the time we got to the end, it was pretty much the same thing all the tribal leaders said. We want curriculum on our people, history, culture, language, and government. And governor wrote it down, and then the next day, same thing, but it was with the state superintendent of public instruction, which at the time was Dr. Terry Ferguson. Same venue, same thing. We want to be heard. We want to develop our own curriculums. And so John said, okay, I'm going to try and get some legislation passed through the state. And so in 2003, we made a run. No, 2000, was it 2000? No, 2004. We made a run at it, but we weren't prepared. We didn't get it through. And so we got a little wiser, a little smarter. Then in 2005, we ran the bill 1495, House Bill 1495, which is the Tribal Sovereignty Bill, original bill number of the bill. And we had an inside joke, 1495, what do you think it was? Should have been House Bill what? 1492. And but when we got it passed, people don't know this story, because we had all our supporters, tribal and non-supporters, vying to get this bill passed. Everything's cool. Oh yeah, it's going to pass. Everything's good. The committee said, yeah, we're ready to go. Everybody left, except John McCoy and I. We're standing there. And one of the state legislators come out and says, we have a problem. And we're like, what? He goes, we have to change a word. Change what word? We goes, and John and I look at each other and we go, well, you have to change a word from shall to encouraged. And we're like, oh, no. And we got to make this decision, because this is the end of it right here, right? And John looks at me and he says, oh, what do we do, Denny? What do we do? The tribe's going to be pissed off at us if we say yeah. And I said, well, let's just get our foot in the door, okay? And so that's what we did. We said, okay, we will do it. John and I just made the decision on our own. We never talked about tribal leaders, We're just trying to get our foot in the door, and then we'll go from there. And that's a good thing we did that, because then that's how this all started to come about, right? And so, so it passed. And then in 2006, we created the Tribal Leaders Congress of Education, and it was a leader of that group. And we worked on this hand and foot together all the way through TLC, the people that we were involved in the state to develop this curriculum. And the curriculum's really for the world. We don't charge you nothing. It's state of the art. There's video of a lot of elders on there talking about different aspects of our culture. And so that's a great tool for you students and legislators and non-Indians who don't know nothing about it, okay? You'll learn a lot in that curriculum. And then, in 2015, State Senate Bill 5433, which required the school boards to incorporate tribal history, culture, and government to their school curriculum. And they changed the word from encourage back to shall. So that was a big win for us, but it's still problematic, because how do we make sure they do that, because it takes staff, to go out there and make sure they're doing it and whatnot, so. But it's there. And then in 2018, there's Senate Bill 5028, which required teacher prep programs to include the STI curriculum. And we had a pilot program at UW, and we did run a certificate on that, and it was very successful. And those non-Indian teachers and Indian teachers came out of that saying, man, we need more things like this in our curriculum, And all the teacher prep programs need to do this, because, teachers are important to the learning of our kids. And if they don't know anything, then they're not going to teach our kids anything either about who we are and what we're about. We need to hire more Indian teachers, administrators, school board members, and whatnot. Just like any other ethnic group, we got to get our people in there. I always encourage our young people, if you have an opportunity to get on a non-native board, get on it, because you can make changes, you can make differences. You'd be surprised what happens when people get to know you and understand who you are and what you're about. They start to feel it like, well, we want to help you. We want to give you money. We want to help you do this, do that, that. That's kind of what happened too, I was on the College Spark board, and they asked me to be on that board. We were a pretty prestigious board. The first board that I was on, they had millions and millions of dollars. And I'm like, wow, really? Why do they want me? And they wanted it ended. The new education, and Mason Morissette was our attorney during the vote decision. This president of this board went to church with this guy. He said, hey, you know any Indians that could be on this board? Yeah, by the way, I do. And so that's kind of how I got on board. When I got on that board, we started doling out all kinds of money to communities and tribes. And that's why I encourage you, get on boards. It does make a difference. You learn a lot too, and you develop relationships with people. Relationships, relationships, relationships. That's the key. Anything else? The key, if you don't have good relationships with people, especially for our Native people, we're not going to trust you, first of all. And then that's not going to be able for us to work together, right? But once we develop relationships with key people, and we have a respect for each other, then we can start to talk more and see what we can do together. And that's kind of how it works. You know, I've seen it, and I just say, hey, we need to get our folks out there, and relate. Don't just because you're not Native doesn't mean you don't have to try and learn who they are and what they're about too. They can be our allies, just like we can be your allies, and we are. Anything with the environment, we're the allies of it too. We're going to take a lead in the climate change stuff. As governments, and so when tribes can get together, we're strong. When we're united, we can do stuff. And when we can get the state to help us do it at the same time, that's even better, So straights that are in red states, man, I feel for them, because that's not good. You know what that's all about. I'm not going to get into that either. But so then from there, we codified our office too, because that was during the first budget cuts in around 2018, around there. And we knew that the Indian Education Office was only one FTE and they really didn't have a budget, so we were going to be on the cutting block to just eliminate the Office of Indian Education. So then John got a bill through to codify it. And I remember Susie Wright calling me, well, what do you want to call it? The DIE, Department of Indian Education? I said, what's that acronym for that? No, we don't. We want ONE, Office of Native Education, one. And that's kind of how that is. And it's codified now, so they can't just kick us out of our office anymore. Then after I left, lo and behold, shoot, then I became one full-time. Both Joe came, and I became 2 FTEs after, I don't know, many, many years. And that's when we really started getting into figuring out how we're going to do this with all the tribes. Because it's not easy navigating the tribes people, even for a Native person. It's no easy task. You got to go through the protocols, procedures, all that, know who to talk to. And the way we developed the web page for STI, it just has every tribe, every department, people, phone numbers, emails on it, everything. You can access it, and that's how you do it. And then you got to take the training. You take the governor's office of Indian Affairs training, then we trained. We did mass training throughout the state around the curriculum. Probably trained about 3,000 people, maybe 4, maybe more by now, I don't know. And well, that was key, because it did. Teachers started to understand, okay, you guys are good. You gave us something that we can do, and you acknowledge that, and you accept it, and so we're using it, right? Because I could see how people, non-Indians, would feel afraid to use certain curriculums because they don't want to offend you, or they don't want to get you mad, or they don't understand. And it's for us to develop it, and they could say, okay, it's sanctioned by the tribes, So, and then from this, spurred a lot of effort from the individual tribes in their own individual school district to start the development of their own tribal history culture curriculum. That is big time, because there's about 10 of those tribes that have done that since, maybe more, I don't know. So it's been a journey. I took the curriculum side of the lead for this, and John took the legislative side. And it took all the tribes to support this, to get this through. We couldn't have done it without the tribe's support. OSBI, they give us up as there's, this is our donation, Joan and Denny. So they just gave us free rein to do what we needed to do. We went out and did it. And I was hardly ever in office, because I was meeting with tribal leaders, school districts, with people. Well, what's Denny do? He's never in the office. And then they go, Joan goes, I'm going to get a cardboard thing with your picture on it. Stick it in your office. Put it in there. Because they don't know what we're doing. And they think we don't do nothing. So then Dr. Bergeson said, well, we're going to highlight the STI curriculum and that whole process of what you guys went through to the whole agency. So we did. And we knocked the socks out of it. And they were like, oh, how'd you guys do that with so little? Yeah, right, exactly, and it got done, and we got our allies. And it was a good thing to happen. It's one of a kind in the world. I'm serious. You guys go look at it online when you get home. Check it out. Okay, and then, so, in closing, I would just say, like, this is a good example of how when the tribes came together. It came all about fishing, the boat decision. That was a big, big deal. That's one of the biggest cases in any country, ever, And here were these little tribes, we're little tribes on the west side of the mountains. All the Coast Salish tribes over here on this side. We said we banded together and we fought the fight and we won the fight. And that because of that, we still have our treaty right of fishing and gathering of clams, oysters, gooey ducks, medicines, plants, all that stuff. That's part of our history and culture. And so that was a big deal. Our kids, when the boat decision was passed, I remember this, how many of our kids were harassed, and, fights going all over the place, calling this river N-word, stuff like that, and I'm like, Jesus, here we go. Come on, you guys get ready. And so we made it through that, and then, the whaling thing happened. Then same thing happened again. All our kids, macaw kids especially, were getting harassed because of their whale that they got. But I just thank the university, the colleges here. Oh, by the way, Seattle South College. This is the first time I've ever been here. And when we're coming up from Seattle, we get here, and we're like, where in the heck are we? Thank God for MapQuest. What, are you sure? And then we get here, and there's nobody we could talk to. We're like, come on, I just know we're going to this building here. So then I said, oh, just turn right here, Lane, let's go here. We're supposed to be by that clock way over there. Let's drive right straight through here. There's no road there. It's the sidewalk. We're driving through campus on the sidewalk. Oh, I'm like, oh, where's the Pete? Where's the Popo? He's not here. This is a true story. I'm like, Lynn's driving on the sidewalk. I'm like, oh, God. You're stressing me out, Lynn. But I guess with that, it's been a long journey. Like I said, the Northwest tribes are, fighters. And we've been doing that for many, many years. And we're going to continue to do that. And we hope that we can teach you some things too. And you can teach us some things, because it's all about learning from each other, and caring about each other, respecting each other, So with that, I'll say some words in my language that I know. Masi Chinama. Masi is thank you. Chinama is the creator.
Thank you, Denny. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for not arresting Denny and Lynn this morning as they were driving across your campus on the sidewalk. Some culturally irrelevant work there. How's everybody doing? We're good? All right. It's really my honor. You know, we pulled out the stops for this one. So I'm so excited to introduce our next speaker here, Mrs. Zoe Higheagle Strong, who has just accepted the position as the Vice President of Tribal Affairs for Central Washington University. So, although as my fellow coup, where we were sad to leave the promised land, we are so happy that she is at Central. But it has really spearheaded what we would say is the gold standard in higher education, and in what she's done and what she is doing. And so glad that Zoe's here to spend the time to listen to her. Tim.
So much, Willard. Inamawikulas, Zoe Higheagle Strong. My Indian name is Huku, and I'm a member of the Nez Perce tribe, also a descendant of Yakima and Umatilla, so Plateau region. I'm just excited to be here, and just always good for me to hear and see the faces of my leaders, my tribal leaders, those who have done the work when the times where there were only half-time FTEs and they're really traveling across the state. Denny, just listening to Denny too, when I first got started in education, I started in really grassroots. I'm from Idaho, off and on the Nez Perce Reservation, and I ended up, coming over to Seattle early on and just getting into Native education from a grassroots and working with tribes, working with youth development programs. One of the first things I did is reached out to Denny and just to learn from him. So I just say thank you for mentoring me then, and the leaders in here have really mentored us and carried us forward. Just a little bit about myself so that you understand where I'm going to come from and share just some really some principles that I've learned from our tribal leaders, from research, from background and experience. As I mentioned, I started out, in Idaho, and then moved over here in Western Washington. I got my degree at University of Washington, and went back to Washington State University on my homelands to work for 10 years as vice provost, and I'm also a faculty. I'm a professor in educational psychology. Now I'm a professor in College of Education at Central Washington and associate vice president. So I've been all around the state, but I want to talk about just a couple of principles that I learned from just my work and just learning from others. And so if we can go, I can't see the slide, so I have no idea what slides we're on, but I want to talk about our first principle. So next slide. The first principle I just really want to talk about is understanding our core values as tribal people, because that's where I see some of the biggest conflicts. And I was really inspired by the goals here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, that tribal government affair goals there's 4 different ones. But some of the biggest things I've seen that have gone well or maybe conflicted is when we're coming from different value sets. And, I've had the opportunity for quite some time to lead tribal relations at Washington State University and doing government-to-government meetings twice a year, and then traveling to tribal governments. And those values are often what I saw in many grant projects. Energy projects were the worst when you talk about conflicting values. That's where a lot of my gray hair is, from those relationships. But that's what really kind of impedes our goals moving forward. So I want to talk about some core values. If you go to the next slide. This is just a graphic I've been working on, our image of just trying to capture different things that I've read and learned, like I said. And at the center, to best understand our core values, it's critical to understand our values are relational, as many folks have said this morning already. Relationships are at the center of our values, and that's how we carry out our values. But relationships are beyond the interpersonal relationships here in this room. When we came in here, we carry all of our relations. And I think Kahedi, who was a Native scholar, said it really well. He said, relational values, we mean a way of being, knowing, understanding, feeling, acting in relationship and other humans, plants, animals, and the natural world as interrelated and spirit-filled. So when we say relations, we're carrying in our past generations, our future generations. When I decided to go to college,
One, I didn't want to go to college really until a Native faculty challenged me. You're helping Native youth, so I need you to go get your degree, and not just your degree, but I need you to get your doctorate degree so you can advocate. So I went from junior college to all the way through to get my doctorate because I was challenged by a Native scholar. But then also my family, my grandparents and ancestors, before I even decided what to study, I got advice from our tribal elders. And they said, there's a big bullying problem here on our reservation, and I need you to go get your degree in this. So I was like, okay, well, is there a degree on bullying around here? I don't see one. So I had to get a lot of help, and I went into educational psychology. So that charged us, but could you imagine a student stepping in with this respect, this carrying this weight of responsibility and respect of all of our relations, our past, our future generations, land, animals, peoples, our relative, our kinship, and our kinship extends beyond just our legitimate, just our actual blood family, but to our relatives, even in our tribes around us. That's a really heavy responsibility to carry in, and that's what a lot of our Native students, when they walk into your classrooms and your buildings, they're carrying that weight. And without really understanding it, a lot of times we don't even know what we're carrying when we go in, and we start figuring it out at college. And that's for me, to be honest, when I was a young person, I was like ready to run. I'm like, this responsibility is heavy. And I ran for my, just getting away. I'm gonna go to Seattle and, just live some brighter, lighter days for a little bit, because we were constantly in suffering and death and loss and responsibility. And so I got here to Seattle. I married my husband. I found a husband, married a husband, Max Strong. He played for the Seattle Seahawks for almost 15 years. And so I finally went from broke to having some cash. And I was like, this is gonna be good. But guess what? I carried that responsibility. And I couldn't just sit and enjoy. I had to do something with what was entrusted in me and given to me. And so I dragged him all along the tribal nations, all around the West Coast to Alaska, Barrow, Alaska, to the far north, serving and working with Native youth. And he actually was given a Native name just for his work and his care for students. But relationships, so when we think about that, we carry those heavy responsibilities. And so for me, giving back is part of that, and that's how we are with our tribe. So if we go to the, I'm not sure which slide, are we on the image? Okay. Go back to principle 1, or go back to this, image real quick. I do just want to talk about a couple areas when we talked about relational values, and many folks have said it today, but I want to hit a few things that I think are really important. To implement these goals that you're talking about here, I think one, just practicing, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but practicing and respect cultural humility, which really means you have to take a step back and deconstruct your ideas and your thoughts and your understandings about Native people, because I guarantee they're wrong. And even me as a Native person, I didn't learn a lot about our histories until I went to college. And so even, I couldn't have even taught somebody much at that time. So I think deconstructing what you know is really important, and then being, we talk about a learner, learning together. Reciprocity is huge with Native community, and what I found a lot of times what stopped institutions, like at times WSU, when we were going through the big exposure of land grab universities, and we found out there was $1.2 billion that we had profited from Native lands. What do you think are the reactions of the administration and faculty when they heard that? The first response was, let's protect it. Let's not talk about it. But what I think really helped is when we talked about it, I said, look, tribes are not going to demand it from you. They're very reciprocal. Our core values are giving back, taking care, thinking about caring for all of our relations, not just ourselves, but all those who are around us. And I said, think about, we have an MOU with tribal nations at WSU for 30 years, and the same leaders that signed that original MOU are still serving today. And how many leaders do you think at that beginning from the university's perspective is still there today? None. We went through 5 presidents, or 6 provosts, 3 presidents, and just a recycling of leaders. But the tribal leaders were still there to this day, giving back to our institution. And so that's, I think, a really important part that we have to understand about Native people is that the generosity is rich. So when Denny's talking about, I started this program with next to nothing, but look what we accomplished, that's not a unique story. That's a story for every time a Native person goes in and collaborates with tribes to get something done. The tribes always give way more often than our own universities. So I think for us letting go of that fear that we can have when we think about our educational trust responsibilities to our Native students. You know, when I think about responsibility, when we think about relational accountability and also helping fulfill education trust responsibilities to Native, when we go back to looking at treaties, executive orders, agreements, there is a unique obligation to Native students. And I from a family where mixed cultures, and I am all about diversity and equity and advocating for all people, because if we're taking care of all of our relations, we'll be in a healthier place. And there's unique responsibilities that we are, that really requires us to think about our scholarships, our resources, our different areas of aspects that are due to Native students because of promise, but how can we work together to fulfill that? Relevance is another key piece of it. When you talk about the degrees and programs, one thing another thing that's important to understand when, even as we're educating our students that come in, is that tribes are one of the top 7 employers of the state. And in some areas and counties are the top employer, and in some degrees like natural resources are the top employer. So when we think about relevance, are we preparing and developing those curriculums and degrees that are preparing our students to go out and work with tribes? And most of all, that's usually an area that's missed in our core curriculum and values. So I'll just close out with a couple areas. I do want to talk about the next slide, just on culturally supportive, sustaining pathways. And you can take a picture of it. I don't want to go into, I know we have an incredible, great speakers, but I do want to highlight just 4 quick areas. And that's one, building authentic tribal relationships first. You talked about it. There has to be that government to government meeting annually, getting in those deep discussions, making decisions, then following up, systemizing it, putting it in policies and practices so that when you leave this institution or this college, that someone else is going to carry that work with the tribes forward, and we're not re-educating or restarting over. And that's what tribes have said often, like, we need those tribal people, those liaisons, so that we don't have to re-educate your people every time a new leader steps in. That's really critical. Addressing stigma and financial barriers directly. We talked a little bit about stigmas, but we also know that the gatekeeping with GPAs and all that, like, we have a different trajectory for Native students. And a lot of times I dropped out of high school, I got kicked out actually, got back in, then flunked my first part at Lewis Clark State College, then came to Seattle, then flunked Bellevue College, then figured what out I knew what I wanted to do, and then went back to college and did well. When we're dependent on scholarships and support because of that GPA, then we're already in a further deficit. So I think it's really critical to really think about those differently and how we get scholarships and support. The other area is just connect with and create Native education pathways. I brought youth all around the tribal youth, diverse backgrounds and Native youth to colleges across our state. And one thing I found is that when you even bring in other diverse students of color, the Native students would still even sit in the back of those students. And I literally see kids sweating as they're in the class and not engaging. And so creating Native specific pathways are really critical to their success and support. I also believe in multicultural centers, and I support those as well. And I try to engage students in both directions, but we have to have space for certain students, or they'll never enter in if we don't have Native specific centers, that we don't create that home away from home. And the last thing I want to talk about, and I'll share my slides on the others that I'm skipping, but going the extra mile is really critical. we know, and an example is that the IPEDS categories, a lot of our data systems are not accurate within our higher ed, and I see that over and over. A lot of times the right people don't have access to those listservs to reach out to students. And so we have, with serving Native students, we always have to go the extra mile. We have to go and create, look at your application system and say, is your application collecting all tribal nations and identities? Are you collecting descendants? Are you giving your Native faculty, staff, and students access to really outreach to those students? Are you providing the right resources when they walk in the door? When we think about pathways, there is Native-specific scholarship. There's a lot of things that our general recruiters and scholarship folks, they have no idea. And so, and they're often the new people, right? Those are entry-level jobs. And so when they're recruiting for us and you're sending someone that's unfamiliar with Native people, we hear horror stories all the time. And so we do need Native recruiters. We do need people to go the extra mile so that we can reach those rural communities and partnerships. So I'm gonna skip the last part. I just wanna say Katsi Yao Yao. I'm a resource. I'm here to help and happy for this work today. And I hope this keeps going. I know this is the 3rd year, I think. And I just wish you guys the best and here to support, because we're all one big family in the Northwest tribes and higher ed. We're not here to compete with each other. We're really here to help all of our Native students be successful. So Katsiang, thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Let's give her another round of applause, please.